of the Virginia Tech BEST program. This is an NIH-funded grant that covers numerous different types of hopefully innovative professional development activities that are designed to give all students, but particularly graduate students and postdocs, more information about the types of career opportunities available to them and the types of skills that will be useful for a variety of career paths. So today our speaker is Dr. Ann Harvey Tanner, and I keep leaving off Tanner, I'm sorry, Ann. Yeah, I may still leave it off. So Ann's background is that she received her undergraduate degree from Northwestern in biomedical engineering. Then she went on to Baylor to earn her PhD in neuroscience before coming here to the Virginia Tech Carilion Research Institute and working with Dr. Reed Montague and his group. She has done some really exciting research over the course of her scientific career, and this has included really cool human neuroimaging studies looking at things like the brain's responses to corporate sponsorship, identifying the brain pathways that are involved in the way we respond to monetary incentives. I should point out that when she came here with Dr. Reed Montague's group, this institute was just getting started, and so she was one of the people that really helped launch the institute and made it an even more attractive place for me and my husband and the people that came along afterwards. So it was very inspiring, and I'd just like to note that important role that she played here. Ann Harvey Tanner also played a role in a number of different outreach activities, including her role in helping coordinate the Roanoke Brain Study. So it's not surprising to most of us that she went on to a profession where communication abilities are extremely valued. She's a leader, a great communicator, and you're going to hear a lot about this as she talks about her role as the manager of guest experiences at the Museum of Science and Technology in Chicago. I'd also like to say that this is a great kickoff to National Postdoc Appreciation Week, which is next week. So all you faculty in the audience and tuning in by WebEx, please make sure you appreciate your postdocs next week. Those of you at the VTCRI have probably already received an announcement about a little social activity that will be happening next week. Hopefully you guys all come and not just eat the food and walk away, but actually socialize, get to know the postdocs, and just thank them for the hard work that they do at the Institute. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Dr. Ann Harvey Tanner.
All right, how's that? Can everyone hear me okay? How's the sound, Dustin? Good, excellent. Thank you guys so much for being here today. It's really nice. I was telling these guys in the first couple of rows, this is like coming back and giving a talk for friends, which is a real pleasure after having been gone for a year and a half to take on this new role at the Museum of Science and Industry. Today, what I thought I would do for you guys, since this is meant to be a career talk, is give everybody a kind of feeling for the role that I'm playing at the museum, and then some of the strategies that we use to help engage our guests in informal education. How do we inspire them, excite them? How do we get them involved in science as lifelong learners? This is something that I've always been passionate about, but I just want to let you guys know that VTC is really the institution that helped to foster this love and passion for communication and outreach. So you guys are in an amazing place right now where you're given a lot of autonomy, creativity, and chances to develop yourself professionally that will serve you really well whenever you go on to do whatever amazing things you guys are off to do. So my talk is called The Science of Delivering Great Guest Experiences. This is one of our newest exhibits, Robot Revolution, which was an interactive exhibit with over 40 robots where kids can come in and learn about the coolest and newest robotic technology. It's incredibly interactive, and our team and guest experiences plays a role in helping to bring these exhibits to life. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So a little bit about who we are. This is just a roadmap for our talk today. I'm going to be talking about the museum and guest experiences, in particular the department that I work in as a manager. And then we're going to move on to great guest experiences. How do our staff, which are called facilitators, provide great guest experiences to our 1.5 million annual guests every year? And then finally, a little bit on communicating science. What strategies do facilitators use to communicate science content to guests? How do we take what's happening in the world of science and turn it into something that's relatable and personal and exciting to people of all ages? All right, this is who we are. Has anyone in the room ever been to the Museum of Science and Industry? Yeah, a few hands. Fantastic. It's a giant museum. It's 14 acres in Hyde Park, just south of Chicago, right on the water. It's one of the prettiest buildings that I've ever had the pleasure to work in. And when you go inside, it's equally awe-inspiring to be inside of. So if you haven't had a chance to do it, next time you're in Chicago, like for Society for Neuroscience or anything that might be coming up, make sure that you guys stop by. So our mission is to inspire the inventive genius in everyone. And our vision is to inspire and motivate our children to achieve their full potential in the fields of science, technology, medicine, and engineering. For those of you that were in my workshop yesterday, we talked about this, but how are we doing as a nation in getting young kids involved in science, technology, engineering, and medicine? I see a couple of head shakes. Not great, right? That's improving and it's getting better every day. And as scientists, we recognize the importance in that, but museums also play a big role in helping to do that because you might reach a 7-year-old and that 7-year-old might become a scientist or might become an engineer. But I think one of the things that's really interesting about it is that we're also looking to inspire future policymakers, future decision makers, future politicians, the people that are going to be making decisions about the science that gets funded and the way that we get to do science moving forward. So it's to inspire people to achieve their full potential in these fields, but also to inspire everyone to think about science in a new way. These are our brand words. So the museum would like to think that we work to be empowering, transformative, uniquely real, world-class, visionary. We are people that champion science in an amazing, fun, and easy way. These are our strategic priorities at the museum. So as you can see, we have a lot of different strategic priorities, one of them being transformative exhibits. 80% of the museum has been updated. So our museum has actually been on its site since 1893. It was not a science museum then. It was actually the Palace of Fine Arts for the 1893 World's Fair. And it's the only still remaining standing building from that 1893 World's Fair. It then went on to have a new life beginning in 1933. That's when it opened up as the Museum of Science and Industry, and it's been there to this day. So 80% of the museum has been updated since then. So the idea that a museum is just a historical relic is something that has gone by the wayside. Especially science museums have to always be changing, have to always be showcasing what's coming next. We see over 400,000 students annually. So a lot of the membership that we have are people that are coming in for school field trips, kids that are coming in for special classes. And I've highlighted great guest experiences because not only is this a department that I work in, but it's a strategic priority of the entire museum. So everybody is committed to making sure that the guest is the focus of what happens in the museum, which is pretty revolutionary for a museum. And certainly at the time that this happened, about 10 years ago was when this became a strategic priority for the museum. And then digital engagement, and then sustainability and growth. How do we maintain a stable infrastructure moving forward? This is just a little bit about MSI by the numbers. It's the largest science center in the Western Hemisphere. Somebody asked me yesterday, and I did find, Lauren asked me, what's the biggest museum? It's the Deutsches Museum in Munich. It's actually the biggest science museum in the world. So we get the largest in the Western Hemisphere distinction. We have 400 employees, 89 board members, and over 500 volunteers. And that's not including our over 250 contractors that come in to provide food services and other things outside of our museum employees. The museum is 14 acres of exhibit space. There are over 100 after-school groups, so that in addition to people coming to the museum, we also do a lot of things outside of the museum walls to extend their visit, with nearly 1.5 million annual guests and a $44 million operating budget. This is our leader. Yeah, go ahead, Mike. Yeah.
The source of revenue from the museum, other than receipts and so forth and endowment, does the city provide a regular operating budget or the state?
We don't. We're part of the Parks Department, so we get some sort of infrastructure to maintain the spot that we sit on, basically. But our revenue comes from ticket sales, and then it also comes from our big capital campaigns that we run every few years, and then heavily relies on donations to the museum as well. So that's mainly where it comes from. I do not believe we get any city support other than to maintain the site that we sit on. So. Good question. Yeah, you guys please feel free during this to ask questions. This is a talk that I want to be a discussion, and because this is a career talk, if you guys have burning questions about how I got to where I got to or what's happening in the museum, just raise up your hand and I'll go through that. Yeah.
So you're an employee of a private foundation, or you're a city employee?
I am not a city employee. I am an employee of a nonprofit institution. So yeah, I am no governmental ties. Correct. Yep. Yeah. So this is our leadership team. We're going to go through a couple of org charts here, which is not the most exciting topic, but I think it's really important to sort of help understand where my department sits within the entire museum. And when we talk about guest experiences, to know that every single person on this leadership team is equally committed to having fantastic guest experiences and being part of this informal education endeavor. So this is our entire leadership team. Andrea Ingram, who's at the top of this, is our VP of Education and Guest Services. So she is the VP over our division, and we report to her for everything. Her background, she has a legal background, she has a law degree, and a lot of experience in nonprofit management, and is an unbelievable advocate for the education division that we're in. It's also unique that guest experiences is inside of the education division. If you go to many museums, the people that stand on the floor are typically operations positions. They are often people that show you where to go to the restroom or that provide tours, but they're usually considered operations. And so about 10 years ago, the museum changed models to have people that engage guests be a part of the education division so that they could be equally committed to the idea that they were scientists and were going to help inspire future scientists as well. This is a little bit about our Center for the Advancement of Science Education that Andrea runs. We have multiple different departments: community initiatives, Institute for Quality Science Teaching and Learning, guest experiences, and science and integrated strategies. I'm not going to be talking about all of these, but I'm happy to talk to you guys about that division of the structure at some point after the talk. But I'm just going to be focusing on guest experiences, which is our team of facilitators that deliver science content, as well as our volunteer resources and programs. And then we have something called specialized experiences, which is kind of our catch-all. If someone comes in and has a donor and 3 VIPs coming in, and one of them is hearing impaired, and they want to go see the U505 in the coal mine, that is specialized experiences. The goal of that group is to help make that kind of thing happen. So that's our department that I'm going to be talking about. This is a truncated department org chart. So there's a little arm over here that I can't fit in and have you guys read everything. Again, org chart's not exciting, but I just want to point out this is an enormous and collaborative group of people that are working together. So I've highlighted my little branch right here. I report to a deputy director and the director of guest experiences, and I'm the manager over Team Oxygen. We are oxygen, carbon, and iron are our 3 teams. We went through a restructure back in February and renamed our 3 teams. Does anyone know why we chose those 3 elements? Any guesses? I'll just tell you. Together, they are the elements, 3 of the elements that make up hemoglobin, and we like to consider ourselves the lifeblood of the museum. So that's where it came from. That took about 5 meetings and a lot of time, so that's what we came up with. There's also room for growth, so we could have Team Nitrogen and Team Hydrogen if we get to expand at some point in the future. So I have 25 facilitators that report to me that deliver all of these science experiences here. So the Burlington Zephyr is our iconic train tour, a new exhibit called Numbers in Nature, You the Experience, which is our biology experience and exhibit, Slime Science, which is an interactive cart where kids learn about chemistry and how to make slime, a nanoscience cart where kids get to experience a tiny experiment using graphene, the information desk, and then our newest exhibit, Robot Revolution. I actually have the biggest team right now, including my senior leadership team, because I have the temporary exhibit Robot Revolution, and all of these teams specialize in their own individual experiences. So Team Carbon and Team Iron have their own experiences as well. We have 75 facilitators on staff, and I manage 25 of those, including the 3 senior leadership team members as well. So that is where I sit, and when we talk about guest experiences, it involves this entire crew of people. So working on collaborative teams, which you guys do every day in research, will absolutely serve you well, because there's not a thing that you're going to do in a leadership position that's not going to involve big, expansive, creative people with lots of different interests. So enough with the nitty-gritty. These are the people that do this every day, but I want to share with you guys what it is that we do. So I'm going to share a video from our museum that just sort of highlights some of the things that we hope to do as an entire institution, and then we'll move into great guest experiences.
The thing about MSI is that we have wonderful tradition. You know, everything that's been done here over the last 78 years, we are the benefactors of. But I think along with that tradition, we're now propelling the museum into the 21st century. It's about inspiring people. I truly believe in our vision of empowering young minds and inspiring every guest who walks through our doors.
This whole building is my office. That's how I take it in. So when I look in this building, I make sure everything is correctly, even to the tiniest thing. You guys need help with something?
Just that we want to make sure that every guest that comes here has a real ultimate experience, that they get something that they can remember. I used to come here when I was about that tall, when I was about 6 years old. You having fun? Good. You too. You having fun?
We don't want to be, oh, the Science Museum in Chicago. No, we are the world famous Museum of Science and Industry. Bam, here's why when you walk in the store. We have such an amazing culture of experiential science.
It's the place where we can bring science to life like no one else can. We have access to authentic objects. We have the real thing here.
We're able to actually touch and experience and talk with scientists and talk with people who are really have firsthand knowledge of what's here. That empowers our guests, empowers our audiences to take some ownership of science, to recognize that they are scientists every day, that science is not for other people, but it's for all of us because we are living and doing science all the time.
Make it easy. We try to make it easy as possible. Learning, but fun.
I think everybody plays a role in it, like literally everybody.
If you want to deliver a world-class guest experience, everything matters. Every single element counts. There is no one thing. It is everything from the cleanliness of the building to the way you were treated by the staff. It all counts.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
There's this sense of community here at the museum that is unlike any other organization where I've worked. We are colleagues with a common goal of engaging and educating the public, and our differences complement this really beautiful fabric of collective ideas and inspirations and talents that make this place what it is.
What you guys need help with? I work here because this is just fun. I mean, this is fun. The museum science industry is fun.
You walk out into the public spaces and there's an electricity.
I love working here. I love working here.
And it is that automatic factor as to like, this is why I work here.
I volunteer here because I love this place.
Maybe I work in finance. I could be an accountant anywhere, but why am I an accountant at the Museum of Science and Industry? Well, I think it's because the people in our finance department are behind what we do, and they see that by doing their role, they're helping all of us bring this place to life.
The content of the museum is breathtaking, world class.
This is the largest growth in exhibits and the greatest push that I have seen, in the last 26 years that I have been here. The museum that was here when I started in 1983 is not the same museum today.
We have to act, we have to believe in our vision, and we have to go make it happen.
I think the great thing is we're not eliminating everything we've done in the past. we're restoring all of that, but we're also building from it.
The creativity that went into the U exhibition is phenomenal. And that kind of health and wellness exhibit that is so interactive, so fun, and so cutting edge, and so immersive does not exist anywhere else in the world. We've looked at all of them, and no one has done what we're going to do with Science Store.
And being a part of that movement and really trying to, see, those are those experiences. Where else can we do that?
I think it's very important for me to be here because right now I'm a part of history. Because I think everybody that works here becomes a part of history here.
And you get to help change people's lives, like whether you know it or not. You're changing these kids' lives. You are sparking an interest in them.
So the point is that in a multitude of ways, in an infinite variety of ways, MSI, since its very beginning, has transformed people's lives.
We are contributing to those discovery moments every single day in everything that we do.
And we can see that, kids get sparked the moment they walk in the door.
The thing that we do that you can't do anywhere else is we provide experiences that come alive. They're large in scale, they have a sense of awe, they have a human connection, and they get you physically and emotionally engaged in the experience. It brings grandparents and parents and kids together. They converse, they share, they interact, and there are very few places in Chicago or elsewhere where you can do that.
That's what it's about learning about life. And that's what the museum is about.
I just want to point out, I'm going to turn this back on. There we go. I just want to point out a couple of things about that video. Hank, who you guys saw probably next to the Great Train Story, one of our volunteers, has been at the museum as a volunteer for over 50 years. So the people that come to the museum love it, they want to be a part of it, and many of them never leave. You see Hank in there probably 3 to 4 days a week, and he's been doing it part-time, and now that he's retired, comes and does it multiple days a week. Everybody in that video comes from every different department in the museum, and they're all committed to making sure that guests learn the best and most exciting science. So it's an amazing and inspirational place to work. But it comes with a lot of preparation and a lot of training and a lot of tools. And so I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about the role that we play in guest experiences to help bring those live science experiences to life. Because without them, they would be beautiful exhibits, but our goal is to turn them from beautiful exhibits into things that are really human and personal and interactive. Because, in fact, someone yesterday mentioned the idea of presenting a scientific poster and not having anyone standing next to the poster. Yeah, you could do that. You could do that and learn all the information off of the poster. But for all of you guys who go to conferences, the idea is that you're conveying information in a different way. You're getting that message across. You're communicating science to people that might otherwise just walk past a poster. And the idea with the exhibits team and guest experiences is to bring those two things together as well. So here we go. How do facilitators create great guest experiences? Our facilitators are all of our floor staff that deliver the science programming that I listed on that org chart. So all 75 of our facilitators that really go out and interact with guests on a daily basis. I do it sometimes, but these guys are out there doing it 7 or 8 hours a day. So the role of a facilitator is to carry out our vision, to inspire and motivate our children to achieve their full potential in the fields of science, technology, medicine, and engineering. So how do they do that? They do that by providing compelling and personalized experiences throughout the entire museum. So it's not in one defined area, it's everywhere. They anticipate guest needs and proactively solve guest issues. So they are the front line whenever a guest is upset or has a question. That includes our information desk and a lot of guest services. Those are people that are trained by our trainers to go out and engage with guests every day. They engage guests with scientific exhibit content in a positive, fun, inclusive, and educational capacity. And they encourage guest participation in museum experiences with questions and games and activities and education content related to exhibits. So this is an immersive and really interactive experience. Nobody has to just stand and read something. There is someone in a lab coat standing somewhere in the museum that will help you be a part of the science. We do that with a couple of skills, and I'm going to talk to you guys about two of those today. One of them is general guest engagement, but I'm going to start with improv. Has anyone in this room ever done improv or been to an improv show? Oh, good. Yeah, I've been to an improv show, so that's fine. So there is no requirement for anybody that comes onto our staff that they have ever done improv before. But improv is a fantastic tool to help people learn how to engage guests. And we happen to live in Chicago, which is the improv capital of the world. And I believe St. Louis, right, Sharon? Is that? Yeah, so it's not a surprise that that's something that the Museum of Science and Industry offers, but we were one of the first museums to do that. Now our museum staff, including our Director of Guest Experiences, goes to museums all over the country to talk about these strategies that we do with our guests and with our facilitators. So I'm going to share some of those with you guys today. So how we use improv as a tool for guest engagement. We don't go out on the floor and play improv games with our guests, but they are skills that are really useful to have. So Viola Spolin created improv, which is just theater games in Chicago in the 1930s, but it was really meant to inspire children in theater. It was a child development exercise. It was not to make people laugh. It was not to stand on stage and to be funny. It was to help children develop skills for play and interaction. So that's where it came from. And theater games were built to foster communication and creativity. Like I said, Chicago is the world capital of performance improvisation, so the Second City, I.O. Theater, Comedy Sports, Annoyance Theater, these are all places that exist in Chicago and have for a long time. And my director is also a teacher at Second City Improv, and so she brought a lot of these things to our department, which has been really helpful. Where do we do these types of improv exercises at MSI? We use them, for one, as a group audition tool. So some of you that were in the workshop yesterday played an improv game with me, and that's something that we do when we're hiring our employees. We stand up and have them play a group game because we're looking for skills that are useful whenever you're engaging guests. Can you work as a team? Can you be positive? Can you not be bothered whenever something doesn't quite go your way? Can you laugh and have fun and not get too bogged down in the rules of the game? So those are really helpful things to have in an audition because you can learn an enormous amount by just watching someone behave on a team. And since we work on large 25-person teams, you better be able to work on a team whenever you come to the museum. We also do it in training, so this is an ongoing thing. We don't just evaluate you at the beginning. We train these skills, and we probably play improv 2 to 3 days a week in our morning meetings with our teams. We also use it as professional development to help with communication, to support the leadership team in learning how to be better leaders and better communicators. And then, like I said, we do this in morning meetings as well. In addition to teaching skills, the idea is just to keep people excited and laugh and have fun and be excited about what they're doing every day. The central tenet of improv, which many of you guys have probably heard, is yes and. So the idea is that whenever someone gives you a suggestion on stage, you never shut it down. You don't say no. You don't say something contrary to that. You take it, accept it, and then you build on it. You say yes and. If someone's at the park walking a dog, you don't go, "That's not a park. It's freezing outside." You say, "Yeah, I'm walking my dog too. Let's go on a walk together." And so that's really the central tenet, and it's a simple idea, but it's a really powerful one in helping to engage our guests. So it helps people learn to fully accept the ideas of others, to add your ideas and information to something that's already there, and then to scaffold ideas one moment at a time. You can never plan too far ahead. In the museum, when you have a guest up there, you ask them a question and they give you an answer, you can't spend too much time worrying about what they might say. You have to hear the answer first and then use that to build on their knowledge to go from there. And ultimately, that helps support our guests as well. So how do we yes and when guests give incorrect science content? This happens a lot. I remember giving a coal mine tour, which is one of our iconic tours, actually the first exhibit in the museum in 1933. And the tour used to be given by actual coal miners from Southern Illinois, and now it's given by our facilitators. But I was in a room asking about the potential dangers of being in a coal mine. And what I was looking for was gas or fire, and the little kid said, "Mud." I was like, yeah, mud could absolutely be a danger in a coal mine. It would be really slippery, and then you might fall and get injured, and it's a long way back up to the surface. There's no way that I could have anticipated that the kid was going to say mud whenever I asked what's a potential danger in a coal mine. But if I had said, no, not mud, how do you think that kid would have felt? Not very good, right? So the idea is to not discourage kids from asking questions, from answering them, and from participating, but to help build on that to get them excited and want to participate again, because all of our facilitations rely on asking questions and helping kids learn. And if we just tell them that their answer is wrong, I guarantee you they're not going to answer a question again whenever you ask it. It also helps us find the nugget of truth, right? So mud might not be the answer that I was looking for, but what's the truth in that? Whenever we ask a kid, what's an example of a vortex, and where have they seen a vortex before, and they name something that spins, it's probably coming from the fact that a vortex also spins. And so you have to find that nugget of truth and then help support that with the kid. And then we ask questions to understand their thinking. If we're not sure where it came from, we say, fantastic answer, what made you think of that? So that we can start to learn what it is that they're doing. We use improv because it helps us improvise with guests. It helps strengthen our engagement skills. It inspires a supportive work environment, and it enables us to get to know each other and laugh together, most importantly. So those are things that we want to do every single day. This is an example of a guest comment that I'll read to you guys because I think it sort of perfectly embodies the reason that we improv in the museum. The guide who gave the talk at Earth Revealed, which is one of our science exhibits, was awesome. Even when my son said something really random, like answering volcanoes when asked how we can help reduce greenhouse gases, the guide turned his answer into something that made sense and made him feel good. We get an enormous number of positive guest comment cards in the museum. Probably 95% of our comment cards are positive. And this is an example of how having someone there to help support that can change the way a kid feels about their answer. And they weren't afraid to participate, which is the environment that we're hoping to foster. So that's improv in general. And then we're also going to talk about guest engagement strategies, skills for inspiring and teaching our guests. How do we get them to understand? How do we get people excited? Improv is a skill that we do behind the scenes, but what do we do when we're on the floor with guests? So I want you guys to take a second and think of a time that you received a great guest experience. It doesn't have to be at a museum, anything, customer service. Just think for a second about a time whenever you guys had a great guest experience. Think about what made it so great. Was there anyone in particular who made it special for you? And what words would you use to describe the experience and the people who provided it? Does anybody have an example of a great guest experience that they've had recently or sometime in their past that sticks in their mind? Yeah.
It's actually at your museum.
Oh, okay, great. How relevant.
Weather exhibit, and it involved gathering kids in a circle and then walking them around to make a tornado.
Yeah.
This was like 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I got really excited and decided to join in with the kids. And it was just exciting. It was fun because I got to participate. The kids like seeing an adult participating besides the facilitator who was there, but the facilitator also included me. It was fun.
Fantastic. Yeah, so being inside of the vortex and getting to participate, it's something that we work a lot on because everyone thinks that a museum is for kids, right? You let your kids go into the vortex. You let your kids walk around and try and make the vortex go away or appear. And getting adults in there is one of the most surprising and joyful things to do because it gets the kids and the facilitator and the adult excited in the engagement. So nice. And there was a person there to help make that experience happen, which without that, you would have gone in maybe and walked inside of the vortex and gone in a circle and seen how it influenced it. But you had someone there to be able to encourage that process. So that's what we're looking to do. So one of the things that we ask our facilitators to do and we train them to do is to actively engage our guests. So we don't sit there and wait for someone to come to us. Everybody is trained to smile and make eye contact and say hello. When you guys are out presenting or you're giving a poster, it's the same thing. You're not standing there hoping that nobody comes up and talks to you, because maybe you are, but that's a really long 2.5 hours to stand at your poster. And so if you're going to be out there and people are going to be walking by, you want to let them know you're here to talk to them about something and to help them learn something. And we train our facilitators to do the same thing. Our facilitators come from all walks of life. They are not just performers. They are not just scientists. We do have people with science backgrounds and theater backgrounds. We have historians and anthropologists and people with customer service backgrounds. So we have to train them all to a consistent standard and give them all these skills, because a scientist might be terrified of getting up on stage and delivering a live drone show, but a performer might be horrified to do an experiment in nanoscience, and they've never even heard of the word nanoscience before. So we're really looking for things that are equally applicable to everybody in our staff. Thanking guests for coming to the museum. We work in a thank you centered culture, and we train that from the day that people walk in the door. We train people to write thank you notes, to walk up to guests and say thank you, to really make thanking people a part of what they do every single day, and that includes our guests as well, because without them, none of us have jobs. And then finally, seeking out guests to engage. Like I said, don't wait for them to come to you is also something that we take really seriously. The museum can see over 10,000 people in a day on a busy day. And right now in September, it's a slow day. And so we'll probably see 1,800 to 2,000 guests. Oh, it's a Friday. We might see more. But yeah, so on a slow day, a 14-acre museum with 1,000 people in it feels like a ghost town. And so if you don't take the opportunities to talk to people and engage them as they come by, you're missing an opportunity to engage in science. And again, just like standing at a poster, that's a really long 45 minutes standing next to a cart. So we train on how to do that as well. Using hooks. This is a way that we train people. Hooks are just quick conversation starters. How do you start a conversation normally? Hi, how are you doing? Would you like to learn about nanoscience today? Have you ever made slime before? So we want people to start a conversation with the guests and not have it be just waiting for a demonstration to begin, but having a conversation. You want to catch the guest's interest and make them want to know more, but we also want it to be personal and open-ended and connecting to what guests are doing right now in their lives. So it's not just, do you want to see a demonstration? Because if the answer is no, then you've lost the guest. So you can't really say much to no, I don't want to see a demonstration, except thanks for coming, and have them go away. So you're looking to start a conversation with, what's your favorite robot that you've seen today? Fantastic, I love Baxter too. Do you guys want to learn about another robot called a drone? So you've started that conversation in that one moment. And then you want to make it personal. This is actually from the exhibit Robot Revolution that I was just mentioning. We got to create a live drone show called Live from the Drone Zone. And this is one of my facilitators just after he trained leading an engagement on flying a mini drone, which is what he's doing there. So making it personal, learn your guests' names. Part of certifying on a program is not just learning the content, but being able to ask someone their name and then recall it during the engagement to say, fantastic, Jody, can you help me with this next part of the experiment? We all wear name tags for the same reason. Everybody in the museum, no matter whether you work in finance or in guest experiences, wears their first name on their lapel so that everyone can identify who you are as well. And that's a strategy to help make sure that the engagement is personal and meaningful. We try and connect things to people's interests. So when we do our drone show, we don't just tell you what drones are being used for today. We ask you, if you could design a drone to do anything, what would you have it do in your life? So that when people walk away, it's not just hearing about what's happening in the world, but how they could then extend it or what they might build or design whenever they walk away. We always make it participatory, and then it's important to adapt your facilitation to each situation. You might have a 4-year-old or you might have an adult. You might have someone that knows so much about the U-505 submarine that they could give their own tour. So the way that you facilitate for those people is very different from how you facilitate with a 7-year-old who's never even seen a submarine before. So those are just some basic guest engagement strategies. And then we move into communicating science. How do we get these messages across? What are some things that we do? What are our central tenets that help us build on the experiences that we make? So we ask our facilitators whenever they first come on board and on an ongoing basis through their training to consider what is science, where does it happen, and who are scientists? Who do you guys think scientists are? Sure, anybody. People who test hypotheses. Who tests hypotheses? Everybody, yeah. So you guys test hypotheses for sure, but everybody, if you ever observed something in the world or made a guess or tried something out, everybody is out testing hypotheses. And so we want people to understand, when we first ask this question to our facilitators, we ask them to describe a scientist. And we get very different answers than we get after people have gone through training, unless they happen to have been in a science environment before. But yeah, the idea is that everyone that walks through our door is a scientist, and we want to make them feel that way. So our job is to make science accessible and fun so that it's not just something that people think lives in a bubble or lives in a lab, that it's something that you do no matter where you're going in life. So we try and champion science in everything that we do, and then we want to make sure that our engagements are always grounded in science. This is really important because it's easy to try and build something in a new exhibit or a new science experiment that's just flashy and exciting and beautiful, but doesn't convey a message, doesn't have a learning objective, doesn't help people understand something they didn't understand before. So part of our guest experiences team's job is to help make sure that all of our experiences are grounded in the science that we want to convey. That is why you need scientists in these roles and why they don't just hire people that have theater backgrounds or management backgrounds into the role that I have right now. Yeah, Mike.
And so along those lines, do you have anything equivalent in your organizational structure to what I'm going to call a curriculum integration committee in a university or a school? In other words, each one of your exhibits is supposed to convey some fundamental tenet or concept from science. I get that.
Yeah.
But is there some czar or committee somewhere that looks at all the messages being conveyed and tries to make sure that, different exhibits are conveying different messages or reinforcing them? Or are they all independent entities?
That's a great question. So they are not independent entities, and we have a few groups of people that do that because we're all in the Center for the Advancement of Science Education. We have a science and integrated strategies team that every time we build an exhibit with a new live science experience has to be evaluated and signed off by our science and integrated strategies team. And they're the ones looking to see what our learning objectives are. Are they consistent across the museum? Are they equally accessible to people? And then how effective are they? So they do research studies to then evaluate how effective those learning objectives are. We also have another team called the Science Leadership Team, and that leadership team is involved in making sure that the things that we're teaching in the museum are consistent with next generation science standards in the school system as well. And so they're looking at all of our exhibits as we develop them to see, are they consistently conveying messages that we're teaching in our school system because we do so much outreach and so many things outside of the building, how consistent is that from exhibit to exhibit? So there's a lot of flexibility, but anything that we do as a guest experiences team is going through those two kind of departments to help assess how consistent those are across the exhibit. So, good. Any other questions so far? Cool. All right. So exhibit and experience content. You guys saw that each team has its own group of experiences that it facilitates. So rather than someone learning the entirety of everything in the museum, it's 14 acres. You can't be an expert in everything. So we ask people to learn about the things that they are going to get really good at on their team and become content experts on those particular things. Now again, I'm never going to learn everything about coal mining, but I can learn the tour and the content in it and then be comfortable with that content so that I can be the expert for the people that are coming through on the tour. But I think a second really important part is to be okay with not knowing the answer. And that's something that as scientists, we're all really comfortable with. But people that are not trained as scientists tend to not be. This is something that's really hard for people to do. It's hard to say, I don't know, in a facilitation. So it doesn't help that about 10 years ago in the museum, before they changed over the guest experience, people used to get written up. They would get in trouble for saying, I don't know, on a tour to a guest. Yeah, I see the incredulous look here in the audience. Yeah, it's crazy. And so one of the major changes that happened with the leadership team was them saying, if you're going to train people to be scientists, you better train them to be able to say, I don't know, and then go figure out how to look for the answer and discover something new. And so people don't get written up anymore. In fact, we train to this. How do you respond when you don't know the answer? And the answer is you say, I don't know. Sometimes guests are asking you a question because they know an enormous amount about the topic and want to share that with you, which is probably 70 to 80% of the questions that you'll get that you don't know the answer to. They are an expert on the train, or they know a lot about the U-505 or World War II, and they want to share a story. And if you guys have given talks, then you probably have similar questions in your audience where someone wants to share something with you, which is great, and that helps just sort of bolster the environment. But if you also don't know the answer, we want to empower people to go learn it for next time. So we give everyone research time as part of their position so that they can go find out, how fast did the train go? How long was it in service? What are some other dangers in a coal mine? What are potential current applications to graphene right now in technology, so they can go learn those things so that when a guest comes up next time and has a question, then they can be a part of helping them discover new things about it. And they're not written up anymore. So this is our kind of educational strategies, and there are more, but these are our central principles, our guiding principles in our case division. So we want to make sure and use inquiry. We're not talking to people. We're not talking at people. We are asking them about things. We tailor content to different ages, and we build on what the guest already knows. So we scaffold their knowledge. We start with understanding what it is that they know, and then we talk with them about what else we can add to that. Inquiry-based learning is just, it's about active learning and creating personal meaning for the guest. It's embracing unanticipated outcomes, which is one of the reasons that we train in improv. And then it's really guest-driven through their personal interactions and their social interactions, and so they get to help guide how the facilitation goes. Nobody, whenever they come into our museum, is trained on a script. We don't hand them something and say, go learn about nanoscience. We hand them an outline and say, here are some things about nanoscience for this particular engagement. Learn how to do this engagement, and then once you learn that, you can start to personalize it with guests. Learn about current applications, present current science news, talk to guests about it, and become the expert in it. But we don't tell them how to do that so that they have a lot of freedom in how they present content. And then we encourage people to ask open-ended questions. So rather than saying, do you like drawing Disney characters? Again, if the answer is no, then you've stopped the conversation. If you ask, what's your favorite Disney character? Then you start a conversation with a guest. And I say that because we had the Treasures of the Walt Disney Archive was a recent temporary exhibit that we had. And people that were first learning that exhibit would say, do you have a favorite Disney character? And so we have to train to that to get them to help set themselves up to succeed. And then the important thing is that guests are then active participants throughout the entire thing. We're not demonstrating something to them, we're helping them be a part of the learning. And then we build off of what guests already know. We ask them questions early in the engagement to determine what they already know. And then again, back to improv, we say yes and to their answers and help build on it, no matter how crazy. The distinction that we make is we don't ever say, you're absolutely right if they give a wrong answer. It's about supporting them without saying you're right and helping to redirect them to get to the right answer. And then we keep checking in with the guests to assess their understanding. If you're giving a talk and you start to see blank stares in the audience, you need to quickly reassess what you're talking about or the level or stop and ask questions. And facilitation is no different. Engaging people in science content is about checking in and assessing their understanding in a really regular and kind of systematic way so that you keep them excited about it and they want to come back. And we have kids in our museum. There's one little kid, Teddy, who comes and does the slime cart every single weekend with his parents. He is 4 years old now. He was 3 when he started coming. He has to bring a step stool to get up and be able to see the top of the slime cart. And he stands up there and he does the slime cart. Now, he doesn't do that because we're telling him about slime. He does that because we're asking him about slime and we're having him make observations and we're letting him make it. And we've got, dozens and dozens of stories that are really similar to that because kids then want to come back and do it again. And without that, you might come once and say, great, I've been to that museum, but we want kids to continue to feel like they're learning and participating every time they come into the museum. And that helps make the facilitation more personal and relevant and also more exciting as a facilitator. Whenever a kid is that excited to watch you do a chemistry show or to fly a drone, it can make your life. And I've said that a couple of times, like that just made my life. So lastly, all the things that we're talking about with engagement principles are not just things that we do for exhibits that already exist, but they're the same things that go into building new temporary exhibits in the museum. So I've had the good fortune, and a perk of my job is that I get to be a part of developing new exhibits that come through the museum. My team is the one that gets the temporary exhibits that come into the museum. So in 2014, that was Treasures of the Walt Disney Archives. And in each of these exhibits, I get to help develop a live science experience. So in Walt Disney, we developed an animation academy. If you guys have been to Disney World, they have those at Disney World as well. But we altered it by making it more about architecture and engineering and how do you apply the concepts that you would do in drawing to a career in science and technology. Robot Revolution is the one that I spent the most time on because that one was conceived of while I was at the museum. and we created a live drone show. This is actually a couple of our facilitators learning how to fly mini drones. These are amazing little guys, by the way, these Parrot mini drones. If you haven't had a chance to fly one, it's nothing like flying a remote control helicopter. They're unbelievably stable and really fun to fly. So these guys had to learn how to engage guests while they were flying drones. But as we're developing the experience, we're also having to make sure that we're hitting learning objectives and that we're using inquiry and that we're asking questions. And so when we hand the facilitators an outline, it includes all of those things in it. And so that experience I started planning for in October of last year, and this exhibit went live on May 21st. It's also going to travel to other museums throughout the country, so it's headed to Denver next. But as these exhibits are built in-house, many of them will then travel to other sites. And so this one, over the next 5 years, will travel to other exhibits as well. One of the challenges that we talked about yesterday, I think in passing with Mike and a couple of other people, is the challenge in coming up with a way to turn a robot exhibit into something that is going to be forward-looking and exciting when you first think of it, which was 6 years ago. So you're trying to build an exhibit that's going to be cool and innovative in 6 years when it finally opens. Then on top of that, it's going to travel for 5 years. So you have to figure out how to keep that exhibit cool and transformative and interesting 5 years from now whenever it goes other places. We have an incredibly talented exhibits team that does a lot of the legwork on that. In this case, we have consulted with and partnered with a lot of research institutions throughout the country and throughout the world that help us make sure that we're keeping the content relevant and future-looking, and they've all agreed to swap out robots with whatever the coolest, newest thing is moving forward so that it can stay relevant and current. And then our next one, which I haven't been told when I get to start working on, but it's our new Lego exhibit. Brick by brick. And so my job will be to come up with an idea for a life science experience that has to do with building and architecture. So that's a real treat of the job, but it uses all of these same guest experience strategies to be able to create fun, new, brand new, never before seen exhibits in the museum. So I just want to end here with another quote from a guest that we had. Just a quick note of thanks for our lovely afternoon. Our family was fortunate to tour the Smart House with a warm, energetic guide who made the experience both informative and personal, using equal parts knowledge and humor. Our tour made all the difference between an average day and an exceptional experience. So I think that really sums up what we work hard to do every day. I'm extremely proud to be on a team that gets to do that, and really proud to be able to take all of the knowledge that I have in science and the experience that I've had in a place like this and go to a place where they're doing it in a completely different way. So, I hope that inspires some of you guys to think about the ways that your science careers are going to really help you moving forward. It was, for as tough as the job has been, it's been a really easy transition to go from science into a leadership role. For those of you that were in the workshop yesterday, we talked about a lot of the skills that are really relevant to what you're doing right now that are so helpful when you move into a role like this. But ultimately, your passion for science and your excitement about what you're doing is enough to make you a stellar employee at any museum in the country. So I'm going to end there. This is a little bit of our team at a happy hour we had recently. So I'll be happy to talk to you guys and answer any questions. Thanks. Mike. Yeah.
On one of your earlier slides, right at the beginning, I saw the word research up there in one of the boxes. And I can't help but think about the phenomenal opportunities of research and education, and I would say neuroscience at a minimum, in terms of how you deliver messages, the guest experiences. And I'm not just talking about a classic kind of a school system coming in and working with groups. I'm talking, as you know more about than I do, from a scientific and neuroscientific perspective, all the fascinating things we can learn, branding, exhibits, group interactions, dynamics. I mean, what an incredible living laboratory to study the biology and the science of the educational experience. So my question is, do you all do that? And do people in your career opportunity have a chance and an opportunity to blend your day-to-day roles with coming up with innovative ways to do studies in the museum of how you deliver learning experiences?
Yeah, I agree. So it's an incredibly underutilized part of a museum this size. We don't really. Our science and integrated strategies team does some good but fairly traditional kind of survey-based learning things. So they bring people in after an exhibit and ask, what did you learn and how did you learn it? And that team does a lot of sort of, what could we do next? What else could we do? I think what a lot of museums might be lacking is just an understanding of the partnership that they could potentially build with other universities, with scientists. I think it's not really knowing what the interest is. Would there be someone that is a scientist that would be interested in coming in and doing some of these studies? University of Chicago has just started to scratch the surface of this, and they come in and they set up tables to do research. But their research has largely been just to avail themselves of a demographically diverse population. So they set up a table because they know they can get lots of people through. So the short answer is no, I don't think it's been done to the level that you're talking about. Where I'm at right now, I think it would be tough to break into, but I think that there are I think that there would need to be someone who could sort of spearhead that, someone that could say, let's just try this out. We have some small grants available, but grants for museums are kind of few and far between. We just got our first NSF grant for the first time since, 1988 or something. So I think it would take someone with the interest and with the time to be able to think about how to do that. And I just think of the 400 employees at the museum, 5 of us have PhDs. So I think it's just not been a part of the fabric of the institution, but I think that means that there's opportunity there. So, yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
I had a question about, you mentioned sort of digital things and like making it digital.
Mm-hmm.
But I know one of the things with that is like keeping people engaged. Like there's just not the level of like commitment that people have when they're on their computers at home.
Right.
And a lot of things you talked about were sort of interaction and like responding to people in real time. And how do you see that sort of moving more digital, or do you see it moving in that direction at all, or staying more like you come to a museum and you interact with somebody face-to-face?
Right. Yeah. So the question for people who are on camera is about digital engagement and how do you turn these experiences into digital sort of strategies outside of the museum. I think right now our digital engagement team is thinking about ways to use the museum visit and then extend it. So rather than having the digital engagement be a replacement for what's happening in the museum, everything from resources for teachers. So a teacher comes in and does a professional development workshop, and then they want to be able to get access to those resources. We have teachers that took classes 7 years ago, and a lot has changed in the class since then. And so the teachers have access to those resources ongoing so that as they're changed and updated, they don't have to come back to the museum. They can get access to that. Other things are simple, being able to take the experiments that we do and do them at home, and resources online for that. One of the big things that we offer is called summer brain games for kids that may not be able to come to the museum every day, but their parents and teachers are worried about losing knowledge and skills over the summertime. And so we have a team of people that develops an 8-week series of games for kids to be able to do at home with all the materials online that are all available, at your local grocery store. So I think our digital engagement right now is focused on that. I don't know what it will look like in 50 years. We could all be going to virtual museums. But I think that there's still a big role to play in being there in person. And then that inspires a kid to want to go and do things on their own in the digital world. So, yeah. Awesome. Anything else? 128. Fantastic. All right, I'll be around for a little bit, guys. So if you guys have questions afterward, I'm going to hand this to Audra because she's got some things to say about the forms I think that you guys have next to you. So thank you guys again.